Firm Technology Trends 2017. So once again, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. If you haven't used the GoToWebinar control panel in a while, just a quick refresher course, you can expand or hide the panel by using the orange arrow. If you'd like to change your audio options, you can expand the audio section and then choose either computer audio or phone call. If you pick phone call, it'll give you a dial-in number and an access code to be able to listen to us there. If you haven't downloaded Brian's handouts yet, you can click on the handouts tab, and under there you'll see a PDF on accounting technology there that you can download to follow along with Brian throughout his presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, I'm going to help to get some out in front of Brian during the presentation, and then maybe have a couple afterwards as well. So please go ahead and chime in with your questions. Use the questions tab, expand that section, type in your question, make sure to click send as well to make sure that comes through to us. And one of us will get back to you either during the presentation or right afterwards. We do offer one CP for this webinar today, and that's based on active participation during the live presentation. And active participation is defined as attending the live webinar for no less than 15 minutes, responding to all 3 poll questions. There will be 4 of those today during the webinar. And then after you close out of the webinar today, after you close out of the GoToWebinar window, you'll see a post-webinar survey come up. You can complete it right then on the spot, and then you're all set. If you don't see it or you don't get a chance to complete it right then, don't worry about it. We'll email out a link to that within the next 24 hours. And then you can click that link to fill out the post-webinar survey at any time. CPA certificates will be emailed out within 2 to 3 business days after eligibility has been determined. So that'll be late this week or early next week. Today is the, I believe, 7th in our expert webinar series this year. The expert webinar series is the largest webinar series dedicated to informing accounting leaders. We bring together the most innovative minds in accounting and throughout business to help you to move your practice forward. Our next expert webinar will be presented by Samantha Mansfield of CPA.com. Her topic is going to be professionalization of client accounting advisory services. That will be taking place 2 weeks from today. That'll be on Wednesday, August 23rd. So if you haven't already registered for that webinar, and I know many of you registered for all of the expert webinars at once at the beginning of the year, so then you're all set and you'll get a reminder about that. But if you have not registered for Samantha's webinar, you can sign up at AWWebinars.com. AW for AccountantsWorld, webinars.com. A brief word about AccountantsWorld. AccountantsWorld is one of the leading providers of cloud-based solutions for your firm. We offer industry-leading solutions for client accounting, professional accounting, and payroll, as well as for document management, after-the-fact payroll, website, practice management, and much more. We've been the recognized pioneer in cloud computing solutions for accountants for 15 years. We like to say that we've been doing cloud computing for accountants longer than the term cloud computing has existed. And our mission is to use cloud technology to help you grow your practice by regaining control over accounting and payroll services. And unlike most other software providers in the accounting space, AccountantsWorld always puts accountants first. We never sell our solutions directly to your clients. We only sell them to professional accountants and allow you to collaborate with your clients using our leading solutions. Accounting Power and Payroll Relief, our payroll solution, have both received the highest rating from CPA Practice Advisor. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more about our payroll solution, we're doing a weekly webinar on ways to make payroll more profitable. And in this webinar, you'll learn how to automate your payroll processing, including direct deposit, tax payment, and the filing of tax forms. We handle all of those things automatically, on time, and with 100% accuracy guaranteed. You'll also be able to eliminate data entry and check printing in your office and consistently earn $3 to $5 per paycheck, all for as little as 45 cents per paycheck, all inclusive. If you'd like to learn more about how Payroll Relief can help your payroll practice grow, or if you're not doing payroll and you're interested in a intro course on how you can make payroll a profitable part of your client offerings, Please sign up for the payroll webinar at accountantsworld.com/payroll. And now, before I turn it over to Brian Tankersley, a brief introduction. Brian has been with K2 Services since 2005. He's the Director of Strategic Relationships at K2 Enterprises. Brian has delivered presentations like this one in, I believe, 48 US states. Brian can correct me if I'm wrong there, as well as overseas as well. Brian is a leading advisor to firms on accounting technology issues and has been recognized 7 times as one of the top 25 thought leaders in public accounting technology. So with that introduction, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Brian Tankersley.
Well, thanks, Div. I really appreciate it, and thank you, everybody, for joining today for this session. Always a pleasure to do this. You know, every day that I don't have to have a real job is a real treat for me. So, thank y'all for being here and doing this. Now, again, this is so. You know, again, I'd like to thank you all for joining. Again, just let you know that the folks from Accountants World are do a great job with their product, and it is not available at any price to anybody that's not in public accounting. So, you know, if you wanted to buy it, run it internally, I mean, you have to be. They pretty much have to. They sell wholesale only to CPAs and accountants and bookkeepers that are in public practice. So that's that. Now, again, Div did some introduction on me, but you guys have a bio slide for me in your stuff. That is my real phone number at my office, and if you call, I will answer the phone if I'm there. If I'm not there, I necessarily won't answer the phone. But you know, again, always glad to give you a 5-minute answer to a 5-minute question and so forth. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at BFTCPA there. Now, our subject today is the CPA Firm Operations and Technology Survey. And so this is in its 4th year now, and this is the, I think it's the kind of the benchmark survey on how accountants use technology. You know, it's been around again through 4 years. I've worked with the data pretty much since inception. There are 2 other people behind it. Leslie Garrett and Randy Johnston are the 2 that are kind of the prime movers behind this one. But I've spent a lot of time looking through this data over the years, and there's some interesting stuff in here which I've pulled out of here. I've also supplemented the slide deck that you have with a couple of slides. I actually went through another practice management survey, which I'll mention a little bit later, and I inserted a couple of slides in there that showed some of the information in here. I will say that this survey tends to attract people that are more interested in getting better at tech, and I would suggest that there are some laggards. There's a population of laggards out there that maybe aren't as well reflected in this particular survey, that are people that are further behind. But I think that, you know, this one is as close to on the mark as you can get in a survey. And, you know, again, it's got you know, double or triple the number of participants needed to have statistical validation. Now, in here, we're going to talk a little bit about the survey, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the respondents. And in the respondents section, we're going to look at the firms by size. We're going to talk about how the mix has changed year over year, because you will see comparisons, you know, with at least one other year, if not 2 other years, in most of the survey. So I want you to see that on an overall basis, because the mix of participants has changed somewhat, and so that can skew things. You know, if you think about it, the way a 50-person firm does their practice, it's quite different than the way, and their issues you have, it's quite different from what a solo practitioner has, which is quite different from a you know, somebody that has, let's say, a partner and, you know, 5 to 15 staff people. So we'll go in here and look at all of those, and then finally we're going to go through and look at the major findings. And so in here we'll talk about some of the issues issues, and it's not in this order directly, but we're going to talk about some of the issues in here related to practice management, some issues in here related to tech management, operating systems. We'll talk about hardware and software, and I have inserted a few slides out of the tech update that I do with K2. I know some of you have seen Randy Johnson's presentation, and I think he did tech update, so I've actually lifted a couple of slides out of it so we can talk about some of the hardware needs there. There's, you know, the hardware has never been less expensive or higher quality than it is today if you buy the right stuff. And so, you know, again, used to be that if you wanted to get a serious laptop, it was a $3,000 to $5,000 problem. You can now get that done for $1,500 or so, you know, again, and get a nice business grade device. So we'll talk a little bit about those. You know, again, when I look at that, that's one of the places where I see people go off the rails horribly wrong. And so I'm gonna rant on that one a little bit if you don't mind. We'll talk a little bit about file data storage, communications, and then some tech spending items in here as well. All right, so now just continuing into the survey, you know, again, this had 86 detailed questions, and so it takes about an hour to go through and actually take the survey. But it, you know, when we get finished with this, we end up with a book that's a couple hundred pages that has the results by firm size and some insights and, you know, a bunch of other information in here. And, you know, I think, you know, when I look at the insights that are in the book, I don't know of anything else. I don't know of any other survey out there that's going to give you this kind of data. So it's, you know, again, it is in pretty good detail. We ask questions like, you know, what software to use for this, that, and the other. And, you know, I'll tell you that when I look at the data, I find it interesting to look at it year over year because, you know, for example, CCH has rolled out their Access platform in the cloud. And as I'm looking at this, I can see about where they are in the adoption. And, you know, just like when Thomson was phasing out Creative Solutions Accounting and phasing in Accounting CS, we could actually look at the year-over-year data and see how we thought the transition was going, and what percentage of the user base had made that switch. So, you know, again, there's some interesting stuff that comes out of all of this. Now, we're focused on firms and technology as part of their business processes. So again, we're not focused on, you know, being Inspector Gadget. You know, Dave Cieslak does a great job of presenting that and talking about gadgets, really talking about getting work done here. So we're gonna, again, this is in the context of our business processes. So we're not gonna, you know, we're not gonna talk about Internet of Things devices and so forth, except I will say that it's just such a bad idea to hook that stuff up to the same network as your business stuff. I can't tell you. It's such a bad idea. You know, if you are going to do that, please segment your network off so that they're on a separate network, because there's some scary security stuff there. We didn't focus on HR management practices, nor did we really focus on the financial performance of the firm. So if you want those things, I think Jennifer Wilson at Convergence Coaching, if I'm not mistaken, or Sandra Wiley over at Boomer, I think they handle the HR and the management stuff very well. You know, if you want to look at the financial performance of firms, you know, there's a number of surveys that do that. I guess the Texas Society and AICPA survey that comes out every couple of years is a good one for that. And you know, again, there are a number of other surveys out there that focus on the financial side of things. You know, again, it's always hard to evaluate those because you got to filter in, you know, are these people on cash basis, accrual basis, and are they paying salaries to the partners out of this, or is that the partner draw? So as we're looking at that, that's another thing we got to look at. All the responses were gathered in Q4 of 2016. The way we typically do this is we'll open up the survey instrument for responses about October the 16th. Typically it's, you know, again, the first business day after the extended tax deadline, and then we keep it open usually till 12/31-ish. So usually Leslie's Christmas present for me is a set of data for me to look at. So anyway, that's what we basically have here. And again, we invited firms to do this through a wide range of media. We've got some thought leadership articles from various editors of publications, email marketing, social media, a lot of other things like this. And again, the people that fill out this survey get a copy of the results. Now, if you want to buy a copy of the survey, it's actually available from CPA Trendlines. I think it's $495 if I'm not mistaken, but you can go to the store at CPA Trendlines and get a copy of it if you didn't participate. But again, if you'll participate this year, you can have it next year. We typically come out with it, late first quarter, early second quarter every year. Now, 3 sponsors helped us out on this. So Docket, Conarch iChannel, and XCM. Again, all three of those have have significant document management processing in there. And again, what you're going to find is, and this is based on the data and based on the trends in the industry. What you're going to find in there, though, is that there's quite an emphasis on workflow going on in the profession today. And as part of that, one of the things that we are seeing quite a bit is that there's, the small firms, the 1 to 10 size firms are starting to look at workflow pretty heavily. Just about all of the mid-size and large firms have done something with process workflow. Many times they're evolving and changing over time. But again, those things are moving through here pretty quickly, and I would encourage you to have a look at the practice management piece there. Again, in whatever product you're using. Now, let's look at who the respondents were to this particular survey, because again, to get 280 people to fill out something like this, it's quite a task. We had 301 firms participate from 144 states, or from 44 states, excuse me, and stratified into 4 size groups: solo practitioners, so no employees. 1 to 10 full-time employees, 11 to 50 full-time employees, and 51 plus full-time employees. Now, as we're looking at this, you can see that we had coverage in most states, but we didn't get every state. We didn't get anybody in New Hampshire or Maine, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Idaho. So, again, looking at those there, again, 44 states, and those 6 are the ones that we didn't have. In all fairness, 2 of those, or actually 1 of those, is a state. I've spoken in the 3 states I'm missing now to get to 50 states on speaking for me are Vermont, which actually we had somebody answer from, Maine, and Delaware. So as we're looking at this now, again, I'm still not sure we have CPAs in Maine. So anyway, that's, as we're looking at that, some of those states, again, are fairly thinly populated, so it's hard. We also Leslie Garrett also has created some separate surveys for some major associations, and so there's one that she's done for one of the major associations, and then there's a second one that she did for the National Association of Tax Practitioners, which is a very interesting survey, just because it helps you see how the bookkeeping tax service business is quite different from the CPA business. Now, if we look at the percentages in here, you'll notice we had a slightly higher percentage of solo practitioners, slightly higher percentage of 1 to 10 employee firms, and a slightly smaller group of 11 to 50 size firms. 51 plus employees was a little bit higher. And as I'm looking at this, the 11 to 50s are really having a hard time because they're not big enough to be able to have the recruiting advantage that the big firms do and the training advantage that they do. But it's just hard for firms in that size. I mean, you're big enough to need a lot of the expenses that you have of a big firm, but you're not so big that you have that you practice in some of these super lucrative areas like public company stuff and huge client stuff that you have. So it's kind of a hard spot in there. And that segment, there are a lot of those that are either merging and becoming 51 plus size firms, or we're seeing spinoffs from there where we split up into 2-3 different firms. Okay, so anyway, that's what we have. Now, if we look at a 3-year comparison of that now, you can see that again, you just kind of see the trends in here. One of the things I'm quite happy about the survey is that we actually decreased the percentage of sole practitioners from 2005 to 2016 and 17. And it's not that the sole practitioners, not that we want them to fill out the survey, but it's just that their view of accounting practices is so different, and their problems are so different than the ones we've got with size firms, that it's just hard to include those in there for comparison. Now, here's a stacked bar chart that just kind of compares those. So, again, notice that the 11 to 50 segment dropped from 30% last year down to about 21%. And so, again, this just shows you year over year some of the differences between here. All right, now, I guess we're about ready for our first polling question. And so I guess Div is going to go ahead and launch this for us. So looks like he's got it launched now. And so the question is, how large is your firm excluding partners? Okay.
And just a quick reminder to everyone, this is the first of our four poll questions during today's webinar. Voting in all four of the poll questions is required in order to earn CPA credit today. Make sure you select one of those 5 options and then click the submit button at the bottom. And it looks like most of you have already done so, but we'll give about another 10 seconds here for folks to go ahead and get that in. All right, last couple of seconds here. If you haven't voted, please do so. Going once, going twice. Okay, and so Brian, we have 32% solo practitioners, 38% between 1 and 10 staff, and then 9% and 4% for the other 2 choices there.
Okay, very good, yeah. And I, when I said what I did about solo pracs, don't read too much into that. There are significant issues. Now you'll see as we get into the tables, I've actually included the data for all the different segments in many of the tables that are in here. So you can still go in and look at these things by firm size, and that should help you out there some with this as well. Okay, thank you, Div. All right, so our next section is we're going to go in and look at some technology management issues. So, and practice management here. So the first question we asked was, what kinds of services does your firm provide? And in here, we noticed that the lead service, believe it or not, as far as percentage offering, accounting bookkeeping was actually #1 and not tax prep and tax planning, which surprised me. But you can see our percentages in here. We do have a typo in here. You can see we have 2 tax plannings in there. Not exactly sure what happened there, but again, payroll write-up and audit are also in there. So this shows you the top percentages in here. What I'm going to do though, rather than lure on that graph with the typo in it, let's move to the next one. And so this shows you the year-over-year differences between the 2. So notice that that just about all the services have dropped off as far as being offered by many of the firms. So you can see that estate planning, business valuation, audits, business consulting, all of those have kind of dropped off. And I think part of that is that if you think about the world of CPA firms and so forth, I don't think you can be expert at all things all the time. In fact, I used to try to keep up with audit and a little tax and a little bit of tech, and I found that I could be competent at one, I could be okay at the second one, and I just didn't have much hope on the third, just because of the amount of information that you have to keep up with. So I think people are realizing that, and they're starting to see that there are some significant economies of scale that come about by having niche practices. And so one of the things we're seeing with most modern practices is that they're picking a smaller number of industries to serve. So maybe instead of just being instead of picking and taking anybody with a pulse within a 20-30 mile radius of their office, what they do instead is they pick a number of industries and then just go forward with those. So anyway, this is this gives you some of that information in here with this. Notice that again, pretty much everything declined, which was kind of surprising to me. Now, if we look at this by firm size, notice that as we're looking over at this, you've got your relative percentages in here. It looks like we got some issues with the denominator in that table there, but what you can see is again, if we look at this year over year, we've got similar results in here. Now, what services do you offer? This is the lower part of it, and you can see that outsourced CFO, business valuation, tech services, wealth management, lit services, forensic, international, and others. So as we look at all of those, you know, that kind of gives you some insight into where all these are. You know, again, the niche services on this page, like you might expect, really are niche services. And so the bread and butter of most firms is actually back on the previous slide, where again, we've got accounting, bookkeeping, tax prep, tax planning, consulting, you know, again, helping people manage cash, manage business issues, payroll write-up, and so those are all in here. One of the things you need to remember is that in most sales training, one of the, you know, and if you think about, let's say, bank sales training, for example, one of the things that they'll teach you as part of that, is that in the bank, they basically go in and they try to sell you on as many different lines of business as you can, because it's harder for you to change when you do everything at a particular place. So that's one of the reasons why, you know, Div's talking about payroll. Payroll, you do have to staff a little bit differently than you would normally staff, let's say, tax returns or audits, which are more project-based work. Payroll is, you know, payroll's not like a project-based thing. It's like a constant river of paperwork and compliance, and so you have to, you know, again, it's requires more people management, and in general more people to do it than you would have, let's say, to do equivalent things, but it is extremely profitable. And, you know, there's a reason that companies like ADP and Paychex and others are out here, you know, because again, it's fabulously profitable. You know, when we go look at those things, those people are definitely making some dough and doing quite well for themselves. Okay, so let's just skip ahead to our next one then. How many partners do you have? And this is, as you might expect, there's some confusing results in here, like the solo practitioner that has 2 to 3 partners. You know, again, I don't know. I don't know how you have 2 or 3 partners and you're a sole practitioner, but I'm going to leave that alone. Maybe you just have some people that you practice with and they're part-time, you know, and you're just kind of part-time at it. That wouldn't shock me at all. Or maybe you know, maybe these are lifestyle practitioners that are just, you know, they just decide they want to work like demons during tax season and take most of the rest of the year off. That would be a pretty normal thing to see there as well. Notice that even in large firms, sometimes, you know, there may be a differentiate the different kinds of partners. So there may be partners that are limited partners and partners that are equity partners, or, you know, so there may be an extra layer in there, kind of like the director layer we've seen at the Big Four in the last, you know, 15, 20 years, where again, it's somebody that is a part, you know, that from an authority perspective and an ability to issue work, maybe as a partner, but maybe they still don't, you know, and maybe they get paid well, but they don't necessarily get a share of the earnings. And so as we're looking at this, you know, if you look at that 4%, 4% of the 50 of the firms that have 2 to 3 partners, of the firms that have 50 plus staff, you know, that's a pretty small number there for that. You know, that's a pretty highly leveraged firm. And so, you know, again, it's all different kinds of practices, all different kind of layouts that you see in here. Okay, now the next one we're going to look at is going to be what are your top 3 challenges of managing your firm today? And the thing that really jumps out at me here is that again, attracting new clients, it ranks high on the list, and that's not incredibly shocking in here. Managing workflow is number 2. Recruiting and retention, number 3. Raising profitability, number 4. Again, it's just like the microeconomics. I was talking to my nephew who just switched his major to business, and I said, okay, here's microeconomics. Everybody wants more, okay? And everything else is theme and variations on that sentence. Looking at the rest of this now, we have opportunities for practice improvement and cost savings. Again, CPA, cheapest price available, is a constant thing we hear. We also see here that you've got understanding the tech options and picking the right ones for your practice, and driving implementing change. Now, this gives you the stats by segments. This is actually set up where the percentages of the total foot across. So the solo, small, mid, and large are calculated a little bit differently there. But if you look at these now, if you compare the 2017 and the 2016, you'll notice that recruiting and retention is less of a concern this year. However, again, attracting clients is less of a concern. It seems like we've got more divergent concerns here than we have in the past. Notice that you've got offering value-added things and staying informed about current tech. I think everybody may have gotten a little bit spooked by some of the announcements that people are making where they're saying that accounting is going to get completely replaced, and I just couldn't disagree with that more. But again, I'll leave that for another day. Now, next one here, where do you get your new clients? Which channels bring you new clients? Notice that referrals are number 1 source. Almost everybody gets stuff from there. 75% are, so referrals from clients, number 1. Number 2, referrals from other professionals and professional partnership referrals. Then we look at this firm website is probably the number one thing here outside of networking. You can see social networking is at 19%. By the way, I was looking at another CPA firm survey today, and one of the things that it said about social networking is the 2 major areas where it's helpful are going to be finding clients, as you might expect, as well as finding staff. And so, if you think about this now in the digital natives, social networking is going to be a way to work here. I'll tell you that I have a 15-year-old son, and I can't get his head out of his phone long enough to do anything else except maybe eat. So it's pretty interesting to see that. Again, this just shows you the relative percentages in each of these. Again, note that the way the calculation's done over here, each of those percentages in each column is the percentage of the whole, as opposed to the percentage of that column. So it's calculated a little bit differently as you look at this. Now, our next thing we've got now is going to be this, time you spend on different things. And one of the things I'd like you to see is that as we navigate across here, I'd like you to see that the percentage as the firm size increases, the amount of time that the person spends doing the work decreases, because again, they have other nightmares. Again, you think about this. Solo prac spends 9% of the time on 9% of their time on business management and 7% on email. So between the two, 16%. Notice that you're 50% higher than that at a mid-sized firm, and then we get out here, with 15 and 8, so there you're at 24, and then we get out here to large firms, and over here you're 29% between those 2 categories. So it's pretty interesting to see those. Again, and you can see a lot of other trends in here. But again, notice that again, in the large firms here, if we believe, we've got some stuff on the people enrolling, but primarily their management types. So if we think about this now, this says that they're probably not billing any more than maybe 600-700 hours a year at the most, as we're looking at this. So again, maybe some of the emails and other things are related to this. But again, notice how the total here is not as high as you might think. Now, as we look at the next things in here, how do client tax returns get delivered? And most popular is paper copy at the office, followed by paper U.S. mail. Emailing tax returns, though, is still a problem. 15% of the solo practitioners said they emailed 60+% of the tax returns to clients. Okay, and that's down from 21.7% last year. So everybody's cutting that way back. But folks, you just can't email tax returns anymore. You need to use a portal, like Cloud Cabinet from AccountantsWorld, ShareFile, something like that. Again, it's good to have something like this integrated into your website so that you can deliver an email message saying that you have something new in the portal, then off you go. Comparable percentages for other firms here. Notice that the large firms percentage is 9.7%, which surprised me. And then the overall percentage of all firms that email 60+% of clients is 9.6%. And that's actually up from previous years. And so, again, it was 15% in 2015. It dropped to 8% last year and 9.6% again in 2017. Now, let me just say this, folks, and I think I should probably just trademark this statement. You will go to hell if you email tax returns to clients. Period. Okay, that's, again, if you're not using some kind of encrypted email system where you're just emailing a PDF file to somebody, you'll go to hell for that. Okay, so just be very careful. In some states like Massachusetts, there are huge fines for that. How do client tax returns get delivered in here? Electronic copy sent via email. Again, you can see your relative percentages in there. Notice that even the large firms in here, over half of them email 1 to 20%. Now, they may have something like Zixmail or something like that they're working with, but that gets you through there. Okay, so next one here, electronic copy via web. Notice the percentages on this year over year have, again, people are still doing this. There's still a struggle to get people to use portals, though, and so that's a challenge that we've got that everybody's got to deal with. Okay, Div.
All right, sounds good. So I'll go ahead and pull up the second poll question here. And by the way, Brian, while I'm pulling that up, can you give your take on why you think so many people are still not using client portals for tax returns? Why is that percentage still in the 30s?
Look at where it is, though. It's 40% on solo pracs and it's 35% on small firms. And the mid-sized firms, you still got 27%, but part of it is that they think clients are going to have a hard time using it. And frankly, it's, that's a generational thing. Again, if most of your clients are over 70, they may have a hard time using it. And I don't mean to be ageist saying that, but that's just the practical matter of it there. However, I think they don't understand the risks associated with emailing that kind of stuff. And the fact that in 47 states now, basically every state except for New Mexico, Alabama, and South Dakota, if you email something like that, it has to be treated like a breach in most states. And so it's pretty severe, the penalties in there. But again, once you've got a good document management system, again, I would encourage you to look at the portal solution you have. So, again, if you're using Cloud Cabinet from AccountantsWorld, look at that and look at website relief and look at how you can integrate that together in order to get this stuff delivered to people online.
Great point. So as most of you have noticed, I've got the poll question up here. I see about 85% of you have already voted at this point. Question that's up: do you use a suite of applications in your practice? Yes, CCH, yes, Thomson Reuters, yes, AccountantsWorld, yes, something else, or no. Please go ahead and select one of those options. Make sure to click the submit button to make sure your vote is counted. And just a reminder, this is the second of our 4 poll questions today. And so we'll take, we're over 90% voted now. Let's take just 10 more seconds here to go ahead and get everybody in.
Okay, folks, move it or lose it.
All right, going once, going twice, and closed.
Very good. Okay, super. Yeah, and we ended up with about 13% CCH, 14% Thomson, 10% AccountantsWorld, 17% something else. And as you would expect, 46% were using a few apps from a wide range of publishers. Okay. So let's now look at the top tech challenges for the next 3 years, and this is this is again one of the key things that I think this one's the most interesting, because in here, notice number 1 is security, and I was looking at another survey, and again, the security is terrifying the accountants, and it ought to terrify you. okay? Because everybody else that has confidential data has already been hit by identity breaches and hacking and other things like this over the years, and it's now our turn because we're the soft target. You know, if you think about it, the governments, you know, law firms, banks, insurance companies, healthcare organizations, you know, again, anybody that's got significant confidential data has already been hit, and now we're the soft targets out there. By the way, this security is, you know, again, just going away. It's number one. Workflow and efficiency is number two, and you know, again, we're you know, if we're nothing else if we're not focused on efficiency, especially in public accounting. Number three here, getting clients on board and working with the firm in a digital way. Tech strategy, which apps to move to the crowd, integration, and paperless firm. Now let's look at how this compares out. So if we look at all of these, you know, security is a bigger concern for solo practitioners and large firms. And since there's such a high percentage solo pracs here with you, I'll just mention that I think you ought to have a real business grade router between you and the outside world, and you ought to segregate your network between your work network and your home network. I've actually got two different networks set up. I have one for home and one for work. And so my home network, I can plug in, you know, light bulbs and you know, video cameras and all kinds of other stuff, but my business network doesn't get that stuff plugged into it, so it takes a little extra work to do that. I also think you ought to have a business grade firewall between you and the outside world, like a sonic wall or something else like that. And you ought to have some user training on security as well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do with security, but that's not the topic today. Workflow and efficiency, notice that that's the biggest concern for small and mid-sized firms, and that's partially because they're having a hard time getting staff, and partially because honestly the economics in those segments are getting hard. And so again, that's a challenge. Solo pracs, as you might expect, getting clients on board working with you in a digital way, that one walks hand in hand with the percentage paperless, which is actually pretty low among solo pracs. I think there's 40%, 42%, something like that, that I saw that are just, they're still happy on paper, and so they've stuck with it. Anyway, so that's that one. Now the next thing we've got here, this is something that's not in your handouts, but I included in here for you, and I wanted you to see that their results pretty much echo what we have now. If you look at their groups are based on client fees, and so you can see in there that privacy, IT risks and compliance, and security, you know, again, privacy and security are pretty much 1, 2, 3 in some order for pretty much every segment. And I just wanted you guys to catch this because that's what we're seeing. And so I'm actually in Durham, North Carolina today for a meeting of the AICPA Practitioners Tech Conference, and I expect we're going to see a lot of security next year. So that's what you might expect, I suppose. Now, how do you communicate with clients and prospects? Notice that we have email, phone, face-to-face, postal mail. Notice how postal mail is so low now, at only 70% are still doing this. If we look at, you know, if we look at this now, text is 50%, secure email 51%, web portal 46%. As you're looking at this, though, you know, if you're thinking about text, anything where you're corresponding with clients, you need to make sure that you're archiving that or keeping those notes. You probably need to have some procedures addressing, going through and addressing the concerns here with text, so that we end up with good stuff in here. You know, again, so that we have those records retained, because again, it's the same old thing. You know, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So again, we just need to be careful with that. Now, next one, let's see here. This shows you the relative percentages in here. Notice that again, it shows you all the various ones in there. We did include face-to-face in here. So again, the good news is 94% are doing face-to-face, and I think that's one of the most critical things to the survival of your practice, is to be face-to-face in front of your clients, okay? Because they've not, you know, even though we talk about machine learning and TurboTax and other things like this, notice that you know, a machine, it can't hold somebody's hand after their spouse has died, and you know, unexpectedly, and say, we're going to figure it out and it's going to be okay. You know, that human contact is the thing that really makes practices go. And so I encourage you to, again, keep up with that one here. Now, portals, notice 75% using, 25% not using, so that's not incredibly shocking here. How often do you trade out computers? I've got some stats on this, but again, notice that for my solo pracs, most of them trade out every 3 years or so. I want to make sure though that you're buying a business grade computer, not a home grade computer. So again, this shows you how often you trade out laptops in here. Every 3 years, every 4 years, every 5 years, or as needed. And the as needed means when I have to, because I don't like spending money. And so I just want you to be aware of this. I'm not aware of anybody that makes unless you're using somebody like Thomson Reuters or Wright Networks or again CTROM to host your tax application and other things like this. I think you're pretty much going to have to go in and buy a new laptop at least every 2 to 3 years. These people that are going out 5 years on laptops, I don't want to think about the problems you have with those. Again, if you use them outside the office at all, it's trouble. I mean, I get 1.5 years, 2 years out of a laptop before I start having technical problems with the hardware. I get about 6 months to a year out of one that's home grade, and I get about 1.5 years to 2 years before I have to have a major repair on my business grade laptop. And I will tell you that one's kind of held up for me here. Again, if you think about it, the amount of money you save by not buying a new laptop is insignificant compared to the lost productivity in here. So just remember, be thinking about this and be thinking about the impact on your staff retention. All right, next things here, this shows you stats on laptop sales. The big thing here to see is that PC sales are going to continue to decline. iPads and Android tablets are pretty flat, and then the only category growing is the purple one in the middle. That's the ultra mobile laptops. These are the super thin ones like my Surface Book that I have. This shows you a little bit about the Intel chips, which I'm not going to get into on time purposes, but what I want you to see in here is that we think most of that hardware you purchase in second half 2017 is going to use 6th to 8th gen Core i5 or Core i7 processors. Notice those numbers over here, the i7-6XXX, 7XXX, 8XXX. That tells you whether it's 6th, 7th, or 8th gen. You want to pay attention to that very carefully, because the 7th and 8th gen there, the KB Lake and the Coffee Lake processors, will only run on Windows 10. And so that's a pretty significant issue that we've got that you may want to consider here. Now, this is just some comparison of those generations. We're not going to go over those. Let's see. Oh, look, so we've got that in here again. And then you can see here that we've got now some specs in here. So 6th to 8th gen, possibly the new AMD Ryzen chips, although those, I haven't owned one of those, so I can't speak to those. I would avoid an i3 Atom and Celeron. That's, it's kind of the equivalent of buying a smart car when you need to race. I mean, it's just, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's more of a personal use device where you're just doing web and other things like this. We also think that you ought to get a solid state drive, preferably an M2 NVMe PCI connection in with it, 8 to 16 gigs of RAM, and again, stick with the business grade hardware. I've got some stuff in here on the Surface and the Surface Book and the Surface Studio. Surface Studio is way overpriced and way underpowered, but boy, it's pretty. I have the Surface Book over here on the left, and I will tell you that I get about 10 hours of battery life off of it, depending on what I'm doing. So it's been a nice machine. There's a proprietary service dock. If you're going to get any kind of mobile device as your primary machine, you need to have a docking station. This is an example of the Surface dock here, and that's actually what I'm using. However, if you're not using a Surface device, you're going to need something like this TARGUS. This is a universal one that works off of a USB 3 port, and basically goes out and gives you 2 external displays plus wired networking plus a few other things. Now, this is something in here about that shows you that dramatically how the big firms are the bigger firms from a revenue perspective are much different from the smaller firms. This is out of the 2017 AI CPA MAP survey. What I'd like you to see here is that in here, 22% of the firms with less than 200,000 are working off of single monitors. are just working off one or two. Notice that 77% of the firms and 80% over 10 million in revenue, and 80% of the ones between 5 and 10 million are running off more than 2 monitors. Intelligent scanning tools, notice the big firms are doing it, the small ones aren't. Using client portal for all client file transfer, notice the big firms are enforcing this, the small firms aren't. So again, those are all things that that are pretty dramatic differences between the two in here. Okay, so anyway, that's what we have. Now, our next thing here, you know, this just kind of shows you in here that 50% of the people in here are using 2 monitors. And so again, if you think about this one, 50 and the 10, so you got about 60% are using 1 or 2 monitors. Only 10% are using 1, which is good. That's way down from in the past. But notice that the 40% overall is about the same. Let's go back and look at the AI CPA stats. You can see that in here, notice that the overall here probably is going to hover about 40%, but notice how the big firms are doing more with more monitors, and that's no accident here. So again, this shows you by firm, and again, it's pretty clear here that 3 monitors is kind of the choice of again the large firms here. Now, we used to do single monitors. We used to do multiple monitors, and we're coming back where you may be able to buy, you may be able to pick up, you know, again, multiple. You may be able to do single monitors going forward because of Windows 10 and some of the other things going with it, because you can snap 4 things to the corners in Windows 10, and so that's kind of a nice thing here. These are some examples, but this is Randy at CES. This is actually CES 2016 in January 16, and I wanted to take his picture in front of that because until you see somebody like 6'1" Randy standing in front of that beast of a monitor he's got, you don't appreciate how stupidly big some of these monitors are. You know, when I looked at some of the pictures that you can see, like the next one that you can see over here, I said, you know, that doesn't look very big. I don't know that that's going to work for me. But when I look at Randy standing next to that, I go, God, that's a big monitor. And I just wanted y'all to see that because I think that picture really sums it up, that, you know, these things are a lot bigger than you know, if you're not looking at them in front of it, you know, what you may want to do is to look at the actual measurements of the screen and then actually cut out some cardboard to be that size and see how big it's actually going to be, because I think it's going to surprise you how much screen real estate you can actually get on a single monitor these days. Okay, so I guess it's time for another poll, Div. So you want to go ahead and do this one?
All right, I will get that up right here.
Okay.
Okay, so folks, you should be seeing the 3rd poll question in front of you at this point. And so the question here is, which of the following is your biggest concern about closing and reporting this year's activity? You have 5 choices there, so go ahead and select one of those and then click the submit button.
And I'm looking at the questions in here, and what about a 30-inch 4K monitor? I'd probably want more screen real estate than that, but you know, I've got 2 27s and a 22 on my desk plus my laptop. So you know, again, I'm like, it looks like a glass cockpit when you walk up to it. But you know, again, Michael says 3 monitors with Windows 7 can snap 6 apps to the edges, better than 4 apps in a single monitor with Windows 10. That's true. That's true. Yeah, and that's how I use mine. And then there's another one here. If you're using a large curved monitor, we use more than one or just the one large one? The answer to that is yes. You could do either one. I will tell you that at some point, though, you are going to run out of desk, and that's a concern with these things because they are just so amazingly huge. Okay. All right. So I guess we're.
Right. Yep. So we'll take just about 5 more seconds here for any final voters. Going once.
This is our 3rd polling question we're wrapping up on. So I'm going to fly through the rest of this.
All right. So I'll go ahead and close that one out.
Okay, very good, folks. All right, so now the next.
Security and identity theft was the number 1.
Yeah, Yeah, and so yeah, again, security, identity theft, and again, as you might expect, that's a concern. One person reminded us that something I didn't mention, which is that identity theft and related information breach stuff is typically not covered by malpractice. You typically need to have a separate cyber insurance policy, and so you just need to be aware that you're not covered there with those things if you don't have separate insurance. Now, one of the things that has changed is that we're seeing in here again people migrate away from the older versions of software. Notice we're down to 4% on Word 2007, which is good because support for it ends very soon. WordPerfect is down to 1.6%. Again, I think those people you're going to have to pry out of their cold, dead hands there. And Google Docs is up quite a bit year over year, but it's still only 2%. Now, what I'm seeing in my Excel classes is more and more people running Office 2013 or 16, as opposed to people running Office 2010. Those days are starting to wane. I wanted to put this in front of you, and the main thing I wanted to call to your attention is that Windows Vista support has already ended. Office 2007, the only version supported is SP3. That support ends in 2 months. Okay, so if you're still on Office 2007, it's time to get a plan, folks. I want you to also see that Windows 7 support ends in 29 months. So if you're replacing everything on a 3-year cycle, you should already have some Windows 10 computers in your network. Same here with Windows Server 2008 R2. Notice that the support ends 29 months. And so it doesn't end and then you do something. You need to be off of it before it ends. So again, that shows you some of those dates. Another thing that may be an issue for some of you is Adobe Acrobat. Notice that support for Adobe Acrobat 9 and 10 has already ended. Acrobat 9 support ended in 2013, and Acrobat 10 support ended in 2015. Support for Acrobat 11 ends on October 15th this year. After that, you're going to need to be on Acrobat DC in order to get support and get service patches and everything. You do have some alternatives in here to Adobe Acrobat. I find their pricing to be a little bit steep. I'm a big fan of the Nitro PDF Pro, but the Foxit Phantom PDF Business is also good. I'll be honest with you, if I didn't have to teach Adobe Acrobat classes, I don't know that I would have the full version. I don't know that I'd have Adobe Acrobat. I think I'd probably use something else here. Okay, so what's your document management system? And notice that we got a high do-it-yourself here. Here's some discussion of that. Notice that solo practitioners tend to be do-it-yourself with Windows Explorer, other things like this. Again, the more people you have, the more sophisticated these systems need to be. And as you might expect, if I look at the solo pracs and the smalls, those are typically going to be used document storage systems that don't have much in the way of organization other than a single organization structure. The mid-size and large firms typically are going to use larger stuff. Workflow management, the thing here is that the percentage considering has gone up, and again, when we start looking at the tables on this, what I'd like you to see is that the overall group that are considering it, which is this line, you can see that 22% of solo pracs, 30% of small firms, and 14% of medium and large firms are all considering adding some kind of workflow solution. And that's really where a lot of the action is. I'm actually giving a talk about that next week at the Boomer meetings related to workflow and how BI fits in with it. Tax software, this is in here. I just want you to see that, again, there is segmentation in tax software, as you might expect. Engagement software, we've got in here. Write-up and bookkeeping software. Now, the important part here, I think, is that I want you to understand that we're still early in the adoption curve for QuickBooks in here. This curve shows you that the QuickBooks Online is growing, and that's the one at the bottom. It's growing rapidly, and QuickBooks Desktop is actually dropping off at a decent rate per quarter per year. It looks like those two, they're going to, and there's some different methodologies you can use to forecast this, but it looks like in the next year to two, QuickBooks Online is actually going to overtake QuickBooks Desktop from a usage basis. So anyway, that's in here. Now, time and billing, and rather than go through those in excruciating detail, I do want to cover a couple of things in here. First off, cloud computing usage by category. Notice that, so I've skipped ahead a few pages. Notice that email hosting is very popular. In fact, you're going to see here that that when we look at small firms, almost all of them have their email hosted by somebody else. I don't think, you know, in most cases, if you don't have 50 people in your office, I don't think you have much business running your own email server, unless you have some kind of strange compliance issue, like maybe you deal with a lot of client support, you know, a lot of litigation support or things like that. This shows you the percentages by type here. QuickBooks Online, again, is winning the race in cloud accounting, going away. Nobody else is even close. There's a stat in there that basically the closest competitor is probably a third of the users of QuickBooks Online, and then if we, you know, inside the U.S. And so really there's them and everybody else. So I guess it's you know, something took 17 years to become an overnight success. Now, web versions of software, you know, the people are warming up to them, which is good. Technology purchasing budget. Notice that 85% don't have a tech budget. Okay, the best way to manage something is to measure it, and so if you don't measure that here, and then you're going to have trouble. How does your budget compare to last year? Unchanged, increased, decreased. You can see there that unchanged and then increased are the two most popular answers in here. Okay, now we gave out some awards. I'm not going to go through those, but since we are right at time, I do want to mention that in here, the printed survey is available from CPA Trendlines. We also do some consulting through NMGI on this if you want to benchmark yourself. If you look at this now, there's your question, you know, ready for any questions or anything in here, but I want to turn Div loose in order to get the last polling question in here. Let's see, here's a question somebody's at. So this one is going to be, let's see here, Q4. Do you currently use Creative Solutions Accounting, true or false?
Yep, and so the poll question should be in front of people now. We've got 4 options there. Yes for bookkeeping and payroll, yes for payroll only, yes for bookkeeping only, or no, I do not use it. Let's go ahead and select the option and then click submit there. This is the 4th and final poll question here.
Yeah, and this particular polling question, Div's been kind of interesting in that even though they stopped supporting this, they actually had a party at Thompson with a couple of kegs when it was a CSA wake, I think is what they called it. It's interesting that this product's out there, but there are still people that just swear by this product and, you know, are just still up in arms that it's gone. But, you know, again, if you haven't looked at AccountantsWorld, I would encourage you to have a look at it. It's pretty much everything that you need to run a CPA firm except for the tax software. So again, you know, again, it's tightly integrated, written out of the box to be integrated, and pretty nice. Okay.
I appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and take 5 last seconds here for the poll question. We've got over 90% of people voted. If you haven't, going once, going twice. All right, we're gone there. So 91% of people do not use Thompson at this point.
Yeah, and that's good. That has actually transitioned pretty. They've transitioned pretty nicely in there. Happened a lot quicker than I expected it to. Okay. All right. So next one here. You want to do a couple questions? You want me to? You want to close it up, Div?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if anybody has any other questions, please go ahead and write them in. Brian, if you don't mind hanging around for a couple of minutes here, if other questions come in. And I'm going to go ahead and just do my one closing slide here as well.
Sure.
All right.
You there, Div? Tell you what, while he's getting that slide up, I'll go ahead and improvise here for a second. Let's see here. It seems to me Intuit is making a concerted effort to push people onto their online platform. That's actually very true. In fact, they have announced the end of support for QuickBooks for Mac. It's going to end in 2019. They've already said that they want people to go to QuickBooks Online in there. other things here. We serve middle class. They're increasingly taking photos of documents and texting them. Security concerns. Yes, I do have concerns about that. However, I think if you get them an app so that they can send data to you, or if you'll teach them to upload it directly to the portal, that's a secure way to do this. But again, you don't want people to go in and be texting that kind of information. Okay, can't get add-ons for programs that work for non-Acrobat programs like Nitro PDF. That's correct, and that is something you give up, Michael, when you don't have when you do something other than Acrobat. Div, you there? Okay, let's see here. So, all right. So, which software is best for forensic accounting and lit support? You know, I'd have to see what you're trying to accomplish with it. There's some different stuff in here you can do. Are there security issues with QBO? I feel better, you know, I don't think they have PCI compliance or HIPAA compliance, but I don't know of any online accounting product that supports PCI and HIPAA level stuff. So, you know, PCI maybe, but HIPAA, I don't think anybody supports HIPAA compliance. So, you know, again, it's just a matter of figuring that one out.
Brian, can you hear me?
I can now, Div, yes, go ahead.
All right, sorry about that. So yeah, if there's any last couple of questions here, you can go ahead and get those in. Wanted to thank you again for attending, and two things I want to remind you of. Number one, make sure to fill out the post-webinar survey to receive CPA credit. That'll appear when you close out of the GoToWebinar application. If you don't see it there, we'll email you a link within the next day or so as well. And to learn more about our payroll solution, payroll relief, we have a payroll webinar held every Tuesday and Thursday, and you can sign up at accountantsworld.com/payroll. So that's accountantsworld.com/payroll, and get into that next week.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, it's the best way to be in front of your clients all the time is going to be to do payroll and other services like that. And again, it's a very profitable piece of this. You know, again, I see a lot of people that run bookkeeping practices driving nice, you know, $50,000 vehicles. So anyway, okay, let me do two more questions real quick. Let's see here. Do you notice any degradation of performance when you're using a process degradation when using a super big monitor? No, as long as I have enough video monitor, enough video memory to drive the monitor, I'm usually okay. Generally works out pretty good in there. Let's see, I think there was one more down here I wanted to get. What do you mean by intelligent scanning? Intelligent scanning is the scan and organize tool. So think Drake, Copanion, you know, Gruntworks, think CCH, ProSystemFX Scan, and you know, SurePrep and the others. The idea there is you've got some digital automation in organizing those documents. Okay. And there being no more questions, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity today.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope everyone enjoyed the presentation as much as I did today. And I know a couple of you had problems downloading the PDF. If you weren't able to download the PDF, you can go ahead and email us, and we can send you a copy of that as well. Email us at marketing@accountantsworld.com, and we'll be happy to send that off to you.